New York Liberty GM has broken his silence about getting rid of Sandy Brondello.
How do you fire the coach who just delivered the first championship in franchise history? That's the burning question surrounding the New York Liberty after GM. Jonathan Kolb finally broke his silence on the stunning exit of Sandy Brondello. For years, Brondello was the face of stability, a proven winner who guided the Liberty to back-to-back finals and etched her name into the team's history. Yet, instead of celebrating continued success, the organization blindsided fans with one of the most controversial moves the WNBA has seen in years.
But unfortunately for Sandy, the end results don't matter.
Kolb stepped in front of reporters, insisting the decision wasn't about failure, wasn't punitive, and wasn't even reactive. But his explanation left many wondering, it wasn't about results, then what was it really about? The press conference was long, defensive, and full of buzzwords. But beneath the surface, it hinted at deeper tensions that could reshape the Liberty's future.
Is Sandy Brondello losing her head coaching job with the New York Liberty? Mind you, she's coming off taking the team to back-to-back championships, actually winning one of those championships, being knocked out in the first round one year, being knocked out in the first round another year. But overall, she is the winningest coach in their franchise history.
The basketball world was blindsided when news broke that the New York Liberty had decided to part ways with Sandy Brondello. This wasn't a coach struggling to find her rhythm or a team that had grown tired of losing. This was a championship coach, the architect of the Liberty's rise, and the woman who helped guide a roster filled with stars to the very top of the league. Under Brondello, the Liberty didn't just win games, they built a culture. She turned the team into a powerhouse that could go toe-to-toe with anyone in the WNBA.
Taking the team to 2 WNBA finals in your tenure as head coach, winning one last year in your tenure as head coach, not enough, as the end result doesn't matter.
2 straight trips to the finals, 1 championship banner hanging in Barclays Center, and a track record of steady success made her departure one of the most baffling coaching moves in recent memory. To fans, it felt less like a calculated basketball decision and more like something personal, something that went far beyond what happened on the court. How could the Liberty justify letting go of the winningest coach in their franchise history? If this had been a team falling apart or a coach losing control of the locker room, maybe the logic would have made sense. But the opposite was true. The Liberty were trending upward, building momentum, and establishing themselves as a legitimate threat to dominate for years to come.
Now, this came as a shocker to everybody in the basketball world, but in the sports world, Sandy Brondello's face has been recognizable throughout women's basketball as one of the top-notch premier coaches that has pretty much transcended the sport. She got Sabrina Ionescu, Breanna Stewart, Jonquel Jones, powerhouse of a basketball team. No one thought in a million years she will lose her job.
Firing Brondello wasn't just unexpected, it looked reckless. The shock was amplified by the fact that Brondello wasn't just any coach. She carried an international reputation as one of the premier minds in women's basketball. Her resume stretched far beyond New York, and she was respected across the sport for her leadership and tactical brilliance. Players trusted her, fans admired her, and even rivals acknowledged the Liberty were in good hands with Brondello at the helm. That's why the announcement sent shockwaves through the league. If a coach with her track record could be discarded so quickly, what did that say about the priorities inside the Liberty front office? Speculation immediately began to swirl. Was there a falling out between Brondello and upper management? Did ownership want a different voice in the locker room? Or was this about branding and image more than basketball results? These were the questions buzzing through fan forums, talk shows, and social media feeds. It didn't take long for people to start pointing fingers at Jonathan Kolb, the general manager, tasked with explaining the unexplainable. What made the situation even more confusing was how sudden it all seemed. There was no gradual decline, no steady drumbeat of rumors signaling Brondello's job was in jeopardy. One moment, she was being celebrated as the coach who finally brought glory to New York, and the next, she was out the door. That kind of whiplash left fans stunned, angry, and demanding answers. But if the firing itself was shocking, what came next was even more revealing. Because when Jonathan Kolb finally faced the media to explain this decision, his words did little to calm the storm. In fact, they raised even more questions.
I actually think Sandy did a good job navigating this group through uncharted waters, through injuries and a lack of availability. And we've got a great level of appreciation for Sandy Brondello, the head coach, as well as Sandy Brondello, the person. This decision comes after a thorough examination of what the New York Liberty need as we move forward into a future of an ever-evolving WNBA.
When Jonathan Kolb stepped behind the microphone, the atmosphere was heavy with anticipation. Reporters were ready to dissect every word. Fans were glued to their screens, and the entire basketball community wanted to know one thing: why. This wasn't a casual press conference. This was a man sitting in the hot seat, forced to justify a decision that made little sense to anyone outside the front office. From the moment Kolb began speaking, it was clear he was prepared to talk at length. The session stretched for nearly 40 minutes, and instead of providing clarity, his answers only deepened the mystery. Kolb tried to frame the move as forward, insisting the decision wasn't punitive or reactive. He described it as proactive, an attempt to push the Liberty into a new era of evolution and innovation. But those words rang hollow to many. How could firing the very coach who had led the team to its first championship be considered innovation? The contradiction was glaring. If Brondello had done such a good job, as Kolb himself admitted, then why was she being shown the door? That inconsistency became the heart of the controversy. Fans and analysts alike couldn't shake the sense that Kolb was carefully dancing around the truth. His tone was defensive, his explanations repetitive, and his reasoning vague. He praised Brondello's leadership, credited her with guiding the team through injuries and adversity, and acknowledged her historical importance to the Liberty. Yet, after listing all of her accomplishments, he pivoted back to the decision to move on, never giving a concrete reason why. It was as if Kolb wanted to have it both ways, honoring Brondello's legacy while simultaneously erasing her from the team's future. That tension created more questions than answers. Reporters pressed if Brondello did everything right. If she built a culture of winning, if the players respected her, then what exactly justified this move? Kolb's responses circled back to the same buzzwords. He talked about embracing change, keeping pace with the league, and evolving with the future. But in the absence of specifics, those phrases came across as corporate filler, not the decisive leadership fans wanted to see. What stood out most was how Kolb positioned himself. On one hand, he took responsibility, saying the decision was his and his alone. On the other, his constant praise for Brondello implied that something larger was at play. Many walked away from the press conference convinced this wasn't Kolb's decision, that all that ownership had pulled the strings, and he was left to explain the fallout. If Kolb's goal was to calm the storm, the press conference failed. Instead of quieting speculation, his words fueled it. The perception shifted quickly. This wasn't just a controversial firing. It was a move clouded by politics and hidden agendas. And if Kolb wasn't truly in control, the question became obvious who really was. The more Jonathan Kolb spoke, the clearer it became that this decision might not have been entirely his own. He stood at the podium insisting the call was his responsibility. But his constant praise of Sandy Brondello and repeated acknowledgments of her success painted a different picture. If Kolb truly believed she had done an excellent job as he openly admitted then, firing her seemed contradictory. That's why many began to suspect the real power behind this move came from higher-up Liberty ownership. Inside the WNBA, it's no secret that front office politics often determine a coach's fate more than wins and losses. Owners want control, influence, and sometimes even a fresh image to sell. For a franchise like the Liberty, who recently positioned themselves as a flagship team in the league, branding and perception carry almost as much weight as victories. Brondello may have been a proven winner, but perhaps she wasn't aligned with the vision ownership wanted moving forward. Whether it was disagreements behind closed doors or a desire to inject new energy, the fingerprints of ownership were all over this decision. Kolb's wording only strengthened that theory. He emphasized evolution and innovation while carefully sidestepping any direct critique of Brondello. He wouldn't list what the team was looking for in a new coach, claiming it could be unfair to Sandy. That careful avoidance sounded less like a GM outlining his strategy and more like a man tiptoeing around a directive he had been handed. To many observers, it felt as though Kolb was simply the messenger, carrying out orders he didn't fully agree with. Social media exploded with speculation, accusing ownership of meddling and blaming them for pushing out a championship coach. The sentiment was simple. Kolb looked like the fall guy, forced to take the heat for a choice that didn't make sense on paper. In fact, some analysts went further, suggesting this move could end up backfiring, not just on the Liberty, but on Kolb personally. If the team fails under a new coach, Kolb may be the one held accountable even, if he wasn't the one who truly wanted Brondello gone. And that's where the danger lies. If this decision was ownership-driven, Kolb is in a no-win situation. He can't admit publicly that the call wasn't his, but he also can't fully defend it without sounding contradictory. That leaves him trapped between loyalty to his bosses and accountability to the fans and players. It's a precarious position, one that could ultimately cost him his credibility as a leader. The press conference made one thing clear. Sandy Brondello's firing wasn't just about basketball. It was about power, image, and internal dynamics that fans rarely see. And while Kolb tried to project confidence, his words only exposed the cracks within the Liberty's leadership. The real question now is how the players, the very core of this franchise, will respond to a decision they had no control over. If the firing of Sandy Brondello blindsided fans, it hit even harder inside the locker room. For players, this wasn't just about a coach losing her job. It was about losing a leader they trusted, respected, and rallied behind. Reports following the Liberty's season-ending game revealed that players expressed public support for Brondello, speaking highly of her leadership and praising the culture she helped create. That kind of backing isn't common in professional sports, and it signaled just how deeply she connected with her roster. So when the news broke, the first thought for many was simple. How would the players take it? Sabrina, Ionescu, Breanna Stewart, and Jonquil Jones were all brought together under Brondello's system. She balanced egos, gave them freedom to shine, and guided them to success. For a team built on stars, that kind of management is critical. Losing a coach who had earned their trust risks disrupting the fragile chemistry that championship teams depend on. While Kolb tried to downplay the impact, saying his office door is always open for player feedback, his words didn't erase the fact that the biggest names in New York had just seen their coach removed without their consent. This is where the fallout could grow most dangerous. The Liberty are not a rebuilding franchise, they are contenders. Players of this caliber don't tolerate wasted years. If they believe the front office is making decisions that hurt their chances of winning, frustration builds quickly. It only takes one unhappy star to fracture a locker room, and once trust between players and management is broken, it's nearly impossible to repair. The press conference hinted that Kolb was aware of this tension. He emphasized that the Liberty are a player organization and spoke about maintaining respect and open dialogue. But respect isn't built through words. At a podium, it's built through actions. And firing a coach players clearly supported sends the opposite message. It tells the locker room that no matter how much they back a leader, the front office will do what it wants. That realization can create doubt, resentment, and hesitation when it comes time to buy into the next coach. For stars like Stewart, whose legacy depends on adding championships, or Ionescu, who carries the weight of being the face of the franchise, the decision could be interpreted as a step backward. They know how difficult it is to build chemistry, and they know how rare it is to find a coach who can command respect while delivering results. Removing that stability introduces uncertainty, something no elite player wants when their prime years are on the line. In professional sports, locker rooms thrive on consistency. Brondello provided that, and now it's gone. The Liberty are betting that the players will trust the vision of management. But trust is fragile, and once it's shaken, it often doesn't come back. And if the stars of this team begin to question the front office's priorities, the Liberty's problems could grow far beyond who's sitting on the bench. When Jonathan Kolb spoke about the Liberty's decision to part ways with Sandy Brondello, he leaned heavily on words like evolution, innovation, and freshness. On the surface, it sounded like a general manager painting a bold picture of the future. But the deeper he went, the more those words came across as empty buzzwords. For fans and reporters listening closely, it felt less like a roadmap and more like a smokescreen. Kolb insisted the choice was not about wins and losses, nor about the results of this past season. Instead, he claimed it was about pushing the Liberty into the next phase of their development, keeping pace with the ever-evolving Wamba. He framed it as a fork-in-the-road moment to either stand still with what had worked or take a leap into the unknown. But here's the problem. Brondello had already proven she could evolve with the team. She guided them through injuries, adjusted lineups, and kept them competitive. If adaptation was the goal, hadn't she already shown she could deliver? That contradiction fueled skepticism. Reporters pressed for specifics, asking what qualities the Liberty wanted in their next coach. Kolb dodged, saying it wouldn't be fair to Brondello to list traits that could imply she lacked them. While that may have sounded diplomatic, it also left a glaring hole in his explanation. If management couldn't even identify what they were looking for publicly, how could fans trust that there was a clear plan in place privately? The lack of transparency only made the move look more suspicious. Fans saw through it almost immediately. Online discussions pointed out how vague Kolb's statements were, mocking the overuse of corporate language. Instead of bold leadership, many felt they were watching a front office dance around accountability. Freshness and energy might sound good in a press release, but they don't win games. Championships are built on strategies, relationships, and stability, the very things Brondello had already brought to the table. The irony is that, by stressing this so-called vision, Kolb may have backed himself into a corner. By firing a proven champion in the name of innovation, he raised expectations sky high. Now, anything less than immediate success under a new coach will make the decision look foolish. If the Liberty falter, those same words about evolution will be thrown back at him as evidence of misguided leadership. The other risk is that vague promises don't inspire players. Athletes at the highest level don't want to hear about corporate jargon. They want a concrete plan that shows management knows how to maximize their potential. If Kolb can't provide that soon, the locker room could grow restless, and stars may begin to wonder whether the front office truly understands what it takes to win. Kolb's vision may have been designed to project confidence, but without clarity, it left more doubts than answers. And the real test will come not in words, but in the next hire B, because whoever takes Brondello's place will have to prove that the Liberty's gamble was worth the risk. Once Sandy Brondello was shown the door, the spotlight immediately shifted to the Liberty's next move. Firing a coach who had just delivered the franchise's first championship was shocking enough, but what came next would determine whether the decision looked visionary or disastrous. If Jonathan Kolb wanted to justify this gamble, he had to land a replacement who wasn't just competent, but undeniably better. That's easier said than done. The reality of professional sports is simple. Replacing a championship coach is one of the hardest tasks a general manager can face. Brondello didn't just bring strategy, she brought credibility. She earned the trust of her players, built chemistry in a roster full of stars, and carried the Liberty to heights they had never reached before. Whoever comes in next won't just be inheriting a talented team, they'll be stepping into enormous shoes. Every loss will be compared to Brondello's record, and every misstep will reignite questions about whether firing her was a mistake. The timing also complicates things. The Liberty are a team in win-now mode. With stars like Sabrina Ionescu, Brina Stewart, and Jonquil Jones, the window for championships is open today, not years from now. That means the new coach has no margin for error. They'll be expected to hit the ground running, command instant respect from the locker room, and continue winning at the highest level. Not every candidate is built for that kind of pressure, and fewer still will want to walk into a job where the last coach was fired after winning. There's also the matter of reputation. Around the league, firing Brondello raised eyebrows. Coaches talk, and they know how unstable certain jobs can be. If the Liberty are willing to cut ties with a proven winner so abruptly, what security would a new coach have? That perception could scare off top-tier candidates, leaving the team with fewer options than they might expect. In other words, Kolb's bold move may have actually made the Liberty a less attractive destination for elite coaching talent. And then there's the politics. Whoever takes the job won't just be coaching basketball, they'll be navigating the expectations of ownership, the vision of Kolb, and the demands of superstar players. That's a tightrope act few coaches can master. It requires experience, diplomacy, and the ability to handle scrutiny from every angle. If the Liberty misfire on this hire, the fallout could be catastrophic. The pressure is squarely on Kolb. His vague promises of freshness and evolution won't mean much unless the next coach delivers immediate results. Anything short of another finals run will have fans questioning the wisdom of letting Brondello go. And if the new coach fails spectacularly, it won't just reflect on the bench, it will land squarely on Kolb's shoulders. The Liberty wanted change, but change always comes with risk. And right now, the hunt for a replacement feels less like a bold step forward and more like a high-wire gamble with no safety net. If Jonathan Kolb and Liberty ownership thought this decision would quietly pass, they underestimated the power of public opinion. The backlash was immediate and fierce. Fans, media voices, and even casual WNBA observers lit up social platforms with one central theme. How could the Liberty fire Sandy Brondello after she brought them the success they had been chasing for decades? To many, it felt like betrayal. The anger wasn't just about losing a coach, it was about trust. For years, Liberty supporters endured tough seasons, rebuilding phases, and false promises. Brondello finally delivered stability, built chemistry, and put a banner in the rafters. She gave fans the sense that this franchise had turned a corner. Firing her so suddenly shattered that optimism. Now, every Liberty fan is asking whether the front office actually values winning, or whether hidden agendas are steering the ship. On social media, the reaction was brutal. Posts flooded in calling the decision nonsense, short-sighted, and a disaster waiting to happen. Memes spread mocking Kolb's buzzwords, with fans sarcastically repeating freshness and evolution as punchlines. Even rival fan bases joined in, ridiculing the Liberty for firing a championship coach without offering any clear explanation. The perception was clear. New York's front office had lost credibility, and Kolb was the face of the blunder. Media reaction wasn't any kinder. Analysts who had praised the Liberty for building a super team now questioned whether the organization was sabotaging its own momentum. Headlines described the move as a head-scratcher and warned of ripple effects that could undermine the Liberty's status as a contender. Reporters grilled Kolb at the press conference, pushing for specifics, but walked away with the same empty phrases that frustrated fans. The biggest danger in this backlash isn't just embarrassment, it's erosion of goodwill. The Liberty had finally captured the city's attention, carving out space in New York's crowded sports market. Fans filled arenas, tuned in on TV, and invested emotionally in a team that looked like a dynasty in the making. But fans are fickle, especially in a city like New York. One bad hire, one disappointing season, and that excitement can evaporate. Once trust is broken, rebuilding it can take years. The decision also risks alienating players' personal fan bases. Supporters of stars like Breanna Stewart and Sabrina Ionescu don't just follow the team, they follow the individuals. If players publicly or privately express frustration over the firing, their fans will side with them, not the front office. That dynamic could create an even deeper divide between management and the people filling seats and buying merchandise. Public perception matters in sports as much as results. Championships may silence critics, but until the Liberty deliver another, Kolb's reputation will remain under fire. Right now, the narrative isn't about bold leadership, it's about arrogance and instability. And if the fans lose faith in the franchise's direction, the Liberty's rise could stall before it ever truly began. The firing of Sandy Brondello isn't just a Liberty story, it's a moment that reverberates across the entire WNBA. This wasn't some middling coach on a struggling team. This was one of the league's most respected minds, pushed aside despite delivering results. Moves like this force the basketball world to question where the league's priorities truly lie. Was this about basketball or about image branding and internal politics? The WNBA is evolving quickly. With rising viewership, star power growing, and new sponsorship money flowing in, franchises are under pressure to present themselves as forward-thinking organizations. The Liberty, positioned in New York, the league's most high-profile marketer, under even more scrutiny. Ownership may have felt that Brondello, despite her accomplishments, didn't fit the next phase of their identity. But that logic is dangerous. By prioritizing optics over proven success, the Liberty risks setting a precedent where winning isn't enough to guarantee security. This echoes broader patterns seen in professional sports. As leagues expand and media coverage intensifies, front offices sometimes make moves designed to generate buzz rather than stability. Coaches become expendable in the pursuit of headlines and marketability. For the WNBA, which has been fighting for respect on the national stage, such a decision could reinforce doubts about how the league values its own history and credibility. If a championship coach isn't safe, then who is? Other franchises are certainly watching. Brondello's dismissal sends a message to every coach in the league. Success doesn't necessarily protect you. That realization could change how coaches negotiate contracts, interact with management, or even decide where they're willing to work. In the long term, it could make it harder for teams like the Liberty to attract elite coaching talent. No one wants to step into a role where job security is an illusion. It also impacts players. The WNBA has increasingly become a league where stars wield influence, and player empowerment is a growing theme. If stars feel management is willing to disregard their trust and relationships with coaches, it creates friction. Superstars like Breanna Stewart and Sabrina Ionescu are not just athletes, they're brands. If they sense instability in New York, it could affect their long-term commitment, or, at the very least, their confidence in leadership. That ripple effect could reshape the balance of power in the league. The Liberty's gamble may also redefine how the WNBA is covered by media. This isn't just a sports story, it's a drama about loyalty, ambition, and risk. National outlets thrive on controversy, and the Brondello firing gives them a headline that stretches beyond the court. For a league still fighting for consistent mainstream attention, this saga ensures eyes are watching, but not necessarily for the right reasons. In the end, Sandy Brondello's firing is bigger than one franchise. It's a flashpoint for the WNBA, a test of whether teams will value steady leadership or chase reinvention at any cost. And if the Liberty fail to live up to their own bold promises, the entire league may look back at this decision as a cautionary tale. Sandy Brondello's exit from the New York Liberty wasn't just a coaching change, it was a shockwave that exposed the fragile balance between success, image, and power in the WNBA. Jonathan Kolb stood before the media, insisting this was about evolution, about pushing the team forward. But his words left more doubts than clarity. Fans saw contradiction, players lost a trusted leader, and rivals questioned whether the Liberty had undermined their own championship momentum. Now the pressure is immense. Whoever replaces Brondello must not only maintain the winning standard, but also prove this gamble was worth the risk. Anything less than another finals run will fuel the perception that this firing was a colossal mistake. For the Liberty, the line between progress and disaster has never been thinner. The question is simple. Did they make a bold move toward the future, or did they just sabotage their own dynasty?